Pot Show. It's the Sit and Pie Show. It's the Sit and Pie Show. It's the Sit and Pie Show.
Hi everyone, this episode was filmed the week of November 8th, 2021. Sit and Pie will cover the Bulls, the Bears, the Hawks, the Cubs, and the Sox. We hope you enjoy our analysis. Thank you and keep watching.
Mark, what do you think are the brightest of all bright spots for the great Bulls?
Well, to me, I'm honestly not surprised that they are playing as well as they are. I am surprised that they're playing as well as they are this early in the season. They started in a groove right out of the gate, which is not easy to do when they made as many roster changes as they did in the offseason. They could completely reshape their team. So I've been really impressed at how they have redefined their style of play, and they've really have come. They're really in sync right out of the gate. I think that's tremendously impressive, and I think it's a great tribute to Billy Donovan to be able to get the team playing as well as they are right off the bat. They're much improved defensively. They are active. They are better on the perimeter. They are getting a lot of deflections. They're very active. They're getting involved. Their guards and the perimeter guys are very involved in the rebounding. Lonzo Ball's a very good rebounder for a guard. Zach and DeMar DeRozan are really contributing on the glass as well. So I think the thing that jumps out at me is how well they are playing this early in the season. Sid, what do you think about what you've seen so far that it really impresses you with the Bulls?
Yeah, I agree. And you know, the schedule hasn't been real easy to start out with either. And they've beaten some really good teams. DeRozan has almost a second life now. Like he's playing like the DeRozan back in Toronto. And, you know, kind of like what we talked about a few shows ago where he's that stabilizer. You know, he's a guy, when they get in those bad grooves, he kind of gets them out of it. Ball's been great. I think you made a comment to me a couple games ago about how he should command the ball at the end of the game. That's probably the only critique I really have of him. But his defense is better than I anticipated. He's always been a great passer. His shot is night and day from what it once was, and he's a really great asset to that team and fits in really well. The guy two guys that I think kind of surprised me that I didn't really think were as good as they are is Caruso. He's just been unbelievable off the bench. And Ayo. I didn't think Ayo was going to even see the court. And the energy level that he plays at, it's infectious. And I think that, to your point, I think Billy's done an unbelievable job. There's so many bright spots. There's really nothing that stands out to me that I say, all right, somebody's not doing what they should be doing, which is a far cry from what we've seen in the past. And to bring that whole thing together, and I think a lot of it has to do with AK and the type of player he brought into the system, right? These guys are all willing to give up for themselves, for the team, and get a win versus individual accolades, which I think is really important. And I think he looked for that in players that he brought in. But yeah, just an unbelievable start. I hope they can keep it rolling. The West Coast trip is going to be really, really hard.
Right. Yeah. That's another, you just touched on it. That's the other thing that I think has been one of the bright spots is the bench. And they've gotten contributions from a lot of players off the bench. They had kind of gotten locked into a rotation the last few games. And Io's been a big part of that. Bradley has been terrific backing up Vooch. Very active player, very good on the offensive boards, can switch out on the perimeter defensively. He has good feet for a big fella. He's not going to bring a lot of offense to the table, but he brings a lot of activity, and I think he's been a pleasant surprise as well. So I think the other bright spot would be the bench. But what have you seen so far, Sid, that might concern you a little bit about the team? when you got off to the start that they have, there might not be a lot, but is there anything that you've picked up on that might be a concern?
Yeah, I think we were both on Bradley when they got him. I mean, I got to say, I saw a lot of criticism, like they need another big man to back up Vooch, but I thought we both felt pretty good about Bradley, and we talked about that on one of our shows. ADA, Anthony sent out a text earlier this morning, and he wants a 4. He wants a power forward with Jones and Devontae Green. It seems to be working, but I think they're going to run into some matchup problems down the road. And I think the 4 is probably the area that I think that I'm concerned most about. Aside from that, though, I don't see a lot of weaknesses or things that they need to fill in. What do you think, Mark?
Well, just a couple things, and they're minor, and you've touched on one of them already. Close games down the stretch. Maybe I'm old-fashioned or traditional, but my point guard's got to have the ball in his hands a lot in the fourth quarter. And especially when you're holding on to a lead or, it's a tight game. I saw Lonzo Ball several games in a row just kind of drift away from handling the ball late in the game. He would just kind of, he just drift down to the corner and let, Zach or DeMar bring the ball up the floor and get us into an offensive set. I'm not used to seeing that. And I hope I don't know if it's by design that Billy is doing it that way, but that kind of concerned me. It kind of was eye-popping to me. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that. And I'm sure they're going to have some close games on the West Coast trip now. So that's one thing. The other is, again, we need to see a little bit more last shot situations and see how they respond. They had one. Zach inbounded the ball to DeMar. DeMar came off a screen, caught the ball, and you can tell Zach was coming hard inbounds to get a return pass.
Right.
But DeMar squared up and shot it. He missed, and we lost the game. But I'm still, I want to see more end game situations and how the Bulls are going to score late, with a minute and under to go in the game, how that's going to pan out. So, that kind of leads us into where we want to tinker with the roster right now. We found out today that Vooch is going to be out probably 10 days. He did test positive for COVID, so we're going to have to tinker with the roster. Simonovic is going to be called up from the D League, and I'm anxious to see him play. And he's going to be thrown right into the fire, I think, in the next 5 games on the West Coast.
Yeah.
But as far as the roster goes, Sid, what any kind of tinkering you'd like to see moving forward?
Yeah, I got a list of 6 guys that I'd like to see them make a move for, and I wanted to get your opinion on these 6. Powell with Dallas is tops on my list, and I'm picking guys that I think are realistic based on the situation they're in. I know we're not going to go out and get Julius Randle or somebody like that,
Right.
But I think we need a 4, a solid 4 that can get us a lot of rebounds and defend. And I think Doug Powell would be one from Dallas. Mason Plumlee from Charlotte would be another one. He's about 7.5 rebounds a game in limited minutes. Larry Nance Jr. is with Portland now. He's a rebounder. He's a decent defender. And a decent outside shooter. Jared Vanderbilt from Minnesota, about 6 boards a game in limited minutes. Young guy, a lot of upside, I still think, with him. Bring back Thad Young. If we could do that, that would be great. And the last one is Brandon Clark, because I think with Jackson playing down in Memphis, Clark doesn't get a lot of playing time, and he's been very productive when Jackson's had his numerous injuries. So those are like 6 guys that I just kind of wanted to get a feel like, do any of those really intrigue you? And the other thing is, what could we give up to get a guy like that? Like, what's with the current roster that you can give up, putting draft picks aside? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Right. Well, I love all your picks there. I think they're all guys that could fit in. I'm partial to Powell. He's a terrific Indian. He's not going to demand shots. He's going to blend in. He's going to rebound. He's going to defend. He's active on the offensive boards. He can run the floor. To me, he's at the top of my list. I think he's an ideal fit. Thad Young would be terrific also. Familiar with, the team, familiar with the organization. Even though we're playing differently this year than we did last year, Tad Young is a veteran and could blend in very quickly. The other guys are all active fours, and we're definitely going to need another body. Even though we want to play smaller and faster, we're going to need another body to compete with some of these teams in the East. There's no question about it. So Powell will be my first choice. What we'd have to give up, every day you read about Kobe White being a trade candidate. And a lot of that has to do with the team has played so well. And it appears that, we've got a lot of the bases covered right now. Where does Kobe fit in? So I think he's the kind of guy that, but other teams are going to have to see him play now. He's very close to rejoining the team. Somebody's going to have to be, taken off the roster. But I think we're going to see where Kobe fits in with this team, and if he is actually expendable in the eyes of Billy Donovan and AK. So I think there's a lot of decisions that are going to be made pretty quickly, and to see exactly what they need to do with the roster.
Yeah. I love Powell too. I think, he's always been a good, just productive guy. Every night he gives you everything he's got. And that seems to be blending well with this type of a team that they have now. So
right, and I don't see Dallas really going anywhere this year. I think they're going to be a team that might look to be dealing even before Christmas. So,
and a guy like Kobe White could fit in very nicely with that team. They're they've got Luka playing the point forward, or whatever you want to call it. And they got Brunson, but they could use another guard in that rotation with his.
Yeah, that team needs shooters. The Chicago Bears are not having a particularly good season. What do you see right now is the state of that team, the state of that organization, where they're at right now? The fan base is disgruntled. They're not happy. What's your perspective?
Yeah, I think they actually played their best game Monday night against Pittsburgh. I thought they played really well. I thought that the game plan was solid. I thought they were missing a lot of guys, and other guys stepped up. I thought that the referees really impacted that game more than I've seen in a long time. That the mystery calls that were being made were just, and I try to be objective about that. Calls go both ways, but that game, it was ridiculous how the calls were going. I thought that's a game they should have won. I thought that's they've had a pretty tough schedule this year. And I think that, it's a transition year for them. And it's tough because, Nagy, you got to know his job is on the line, right? If they don't make the playoffs this year, he's out, Pace is out, you got to play the kid, right? And the kid, there's growing pains that go along with playing Justin Fields, and he's learning, they're learning how to incorporate him into what they want to do, and how his skill set fits, best with the team. And I just think it's a bad combination of things happening. I think at the end of the year, there'll be major changes. I don't see this team making the playoffs. And I don't think that the fan base will stand for another year. And they've made a lot of mistakes. I mean, the hard part is they're not going to have a lot of money. They're not going to have any draft picks because they, moved draft picks for Mac and Trubisky and other situations. So I think that it's going to be a hard rebuild for whoever comes in and takes their place. I feel like it's weird. It's like, I'll give you two examples: the Bulls and the LA Rams. And I think in sports now, there's two ways to do it. You do it, if you're really good at drafting, you build it through the draft in any sport, right? But then there's this other mindset where AK comes in and what the Rams have done, and they just go all in. They push all their chips in the middle of the table, and that one seems to work too pretty well. Unfortunately for the Bears, they kind of went half in. You know, they kind of said, all right, this is our quarterback. We like him. You know, this is Mac. We're going to go, you know, ante up for him. But they didn't go out and get Tom Brady. You know, they didn't when they had a shot probably to get him if they really wanted to. You know, like, so I think that they're in that tough in between thing that it's tough for teams to win when, you know, you don't put all your chips in the table. And, you know, the Rams, I don't think they have another first round. They haven't had a first round draft pick in, I don't know, 5 years, and they won't have another one for another 3 or 4 years. So it's like, you know, they're invested. They want to win a championship. They want to win it now. They've got that beautiful stadium. You know, it's all lined up. And I think, you know, for the Bears, it's going to be a long road back. You know, they aged quick. You know, that team from about 3 or 4 years ago got really, really old, really fast. You know,
Right. What's your impression of Justin Fields so far? Like you just mentioned, he's been put into a tough situation. Have you seen development in his game?
Oh yeah, I definitely have. I think he runs the read option really well for a guy that, you know, that's in just starting out in the pros. His play action is really, really solid. I think his accuracy on the long ball is tremendous. You know, there was a play, and I watched a video of him from a number of different angles. I don't know if you remember the throw to Komet over the middle against Pittsburgh, where Komet almost was like like an accordion. Do you remember that?
Right.
Well, if you watch Fields, he looked off that safety, and that freed up Komet right down the middle of the field. I mean, he held that look for a long time, and then he went center of the field to Komet. So, you know, and the other two things that I think that I love about the guy is that burst. Like when he gets around the end, nobody's going to catch him. He's going to get you 5-6 yards if you seal off that end. There's nobody going to get him. You know.
Right.
And so many quarterbacks, they try that and they can't. They're not quick enough or fast enough. He's an athletic freak, you know, so he can get around that corner. And the last thing I love about him is a winner. You know, the guy just knows how to win. And I remember with Mitch, I never felt was a guy that's going to finish a game for you, you know.
Right.
And with Fields, now even though they lost that game against Pittsburgh, he did everything he could do to put him in a position to win. They were leading up until the end of that game, and then you know we had the long field goal, and they lost the game. And you know we thought we had a Bedoin situation with the Bears, you know, but it wasn't even close. But he does everything to put him in a position to win, and he's like he never shows any sign of emotion, or he's just so cool and calm under pressure, you know. It's amazing for a guy at his age to be at that level of just inter thought. You know, he's I love him. I think he was a great pick. I hope they can build around him.
Yeah. That's been the most impressive thing for me watching him play. He is obviously talented. He does have really good touch on the deep ball. But the most impressive thing in a losing situation is his poise. And the way he stands in there, and the way, you know, he'll make a bad play, an obvious bad play, and he'll just, he won't let it affect him. He'll go on to the next play. I think that's very, very impressive for a young player in a tough situation again. I've been very impressed with him, his makeup, which they talked about when they drafted him, being really, really strong. And I think that's been on display in a tough season so far for the Bears. But I've got faith in the kid. I think he's going to be a really good player. You know, once he moves into probably a new system next year, which is, I think we're in agreement that that's going to happen. I think he can really be a talented quarterback in the NFL. You know, let's just start with the on ice performance. I really think that the team is better than they've shown. They got off to an awful start, a 1-9-2, I believe, and then they made the coaching change, which we'll touch on in a little bit. But this team is better than that record, and I think they have shown some life the last two games. When they did make the coaching change and relieved Jeremy Colleton of his duties, and they brought in Derek King, they brought him up from Rockford, which is the same path that Colleton took. But Derek King's 54 years old. He's been around a long time. He was a player in the league. And the first thing he said when asked, what is he going to do to improve this team? And he jumped right in and said, it's all about our defense. We're just not good defensively. And it's a very small sample size, obviously, 2 games, but we've won 2 games and we've given up 3 goals in 2 games. So I think whatever he's preaching in the skate arounds and practice is kind of carrying over into the game. They have been a much more energized team the last couple games. They've been a better team than the last couple games, and this resulted in a couple of wins back to back. We have a winning streak with the Blackhawks, which we at a point I didn't think we'd see that for a long time. But they do have better players than their record indicates, and I think they're going to play better. I'm not going to call them a playoff team, which they were kind of labeled as in the preseason, but I think they're going to play better. And I don't know if the off the ice controversies has carried over on the ice. I find that hard to believe. There's only a couple players left from 2010 when the incident happened that are still with the organization, Kane and Taves. So I'm not sure if that carries over, but sometimes a dark cloud can kind of drain a team a little bit, but I don't think that's the case, and I expect them to play better as the season goes on. But a coaching change was definitely necessary. Jeremy Colleton never connected with the fan base. He was a very low energy, kind of a dull guy. Really, Chicago sports has such a history with vibrant personalities as their coaches and managers. And he was just, he was just a wet rag. There was just nothing to him. I don't think he had a chance to succeed in the long run. But Derek King is on an interim basis for the rest of the season. He's going to finish out the season, looks like, and he's off to a good start. Now, where they go from here, they also have an interim general manager. And as we move through the season, once the trade deadline comes along, I have seen a couple of, hockey experts just kind of throw out there, are the Hawks going to consider dealing Taves and Kane? I think that's something to watch moving forward. They're in the back 9 of their careers, and they're both at a very high salary, and that's a very small cap in the NHL. So if they're looking to get some relief, I would hate to see either one of those leave. I'd love to see them both finish their careers with the Blackhawks. But I'll be just interested to see. Hopefully, the team progresses and plays better, and that's not a choice to make. So, what do you think, Sid?
Yeah, you look at Kirby Dach, Taves, DeBrincat, Kubalik, Kane. There's a lot of firepower in that offense. But then you go to the defensive end, and Fleury's goals against average is 3.81. You compare that to Carolina, they're at 1.91. So that's the missing link, and it's been that way for a few years. When they were really good and they had that back line, it was like nothing was getting by those guys. Chalmerson and
Duncan Keith,
and Seabrook in his prime was really good. It dried up fast on the defensive line, but it's, I guess it's just one of those things. They've got to tighten that up. They got to shore that down. But I love that the offensive end of the game, and I think they can compete with anybody with that, with the 5 or 6 I mentioned. Now, Seth Jones seems to be the real deal on defense, but that's only one guy, so you need to round that out a little bit.
Right.
All right, we'll move on. How about the Cubs? The key question is what do we need? And I'll throw that over to you, but it's kind of like, where do you begin? But
Yeah, you know what? When we have our baseball show with our baseball experts, we'll dive deep into this. Um, the Cubs, I think the statement that's been made by both Tom Ricketts and Jed Hoyer is that they are going to spend in free agency wisely. And to me, how I interpret that is that they are going to compare their needs, immediate needs, to what they have in the minor leagues. I think that has to match up. What I'm saying is, let's say Brendan Davis, you expect to be your starting left fielder at some point this year. You're not going to invest 4 or 5 years at $20+ million a year in someone that you're going to play in left field.
I think that's a smart decision.
Exactly. And we don't know exactly how they evaluate their players or where they rank them as far as being ready to step into the major leagues, let's say as a starter. I think that's difficult for us as fans. I mean, Brendan Davis, we expect to be hopefully up this year and take one of the outfield spots. But I think they're going to try to look at their organization, look at their minor leagues, who's ready to step in at certain positions, and then go from there in free agency and bring in guys where they feel that they are weaker in terms of guys ready to step in from the minor leagues to take a position on the major league team. That's kind of how I'm interpreting that, and I think, and I buy into that. I do. But I mean, the current roster. One thing, and I'll turn it over to you after I make this statement. Said one thing I don't want to hear. Well, actually, there's two things. I don't want to hear that Nico Horner is our shortstop, and I know I'm going to get pushback on that.
Right.
But he has not proven he can stay healthy. And in a year where there's 5 elite shortstops on the market, in arguably the most important position on the field, I would love the Cubs to see, if they are going to invest big, invest in a shortstop.
Yeah. I think that's, I completely agree. And I don't have a problem with Nico. I think Nico, you got Madrigal now, so he's probably not your second base. Nico's probably not your second baseman.
Right.
Can he play the outfield potentially? Can he rotate like they did with Happ? I mean, they could probably do some things with him, but and we'll get into the 5 when we get Anthony and Timmy on, but you're right. There's 5 out there. Let's get one of them. And those guys they're going to be good when you're going to be good again. Right. So you're not going after guys that, are past their prime. They're right in their prime, right in their wheelhouse, where there's 5 guys that you could easily tap into and solve that problem and build towards your future. So, I completely agree with that philosophy. I love that philosophy. I mean, I was the guy that said blow this thing up 2 years ago, and people were like, oh, you can't get rid of Rizzo, you can't get rid of Baez, you can't get rid of Bryant. Well, all the teams that got those guys really didn't win what they wanted to win, So if you look back on it, now what do we have? We have a $66 million payroll. By comparison with the Yankees, $223 million. By comparison with the White Sox, $156 million. We have plenty of money, right? We now have at least 13 prospects that we didn't have before. And if we want to go back out there and get Rizzo and let him end his career with the Cubs, fine. But would I rather see Schwindel right now at first base? I probably would. We're building towards the future, because you got to let go of the past at some point. And I think that Jed did the right thing. He ripped the Band-Aid at the right time. And I love that philosophy. Get Davis out there. If Davis is your guy, don't go spend a lot of money on Castellanos when Davis is your guy, right? And they probably got 3 or 4 guys that they've already targeted, that they said, these are guys that we're going to bring up and we're going to run with. But if there's those gems out there and you can pluck them, it's like I would go do that. It was kind of like the Cubs. Remember when they picked up Ramirez and they got him for nothing, right, from the Padres.
Right.
And look, he had just such a fantastic career with the Cubs.
Right.
And that was a guy they plucked, and I think there will be those free agents this year that they can get that will help round them out. But, this isn't going to be solved this next year, I don't think. I don't think that they're going to go spend, $120 million on players, because they're not going to be ready either way. And I think a lot of this too, Mark, is about the pitching. You know, I always go back to the pitching, and I don't think that you can get that good that fast with what's out there in the marketplace. You got Gaussman, you got a couple other guys. We'll talk about it again with Timmy and with ADA, but I don't think that you can rebuild this thing, and they don't have enough arms in their minor leagues yet to really be competitive. So
yeah. You know, and getting back, I think that it's going to be interesting because I mentioned Nico Horner, but as far as the minor leagues go for the Cubs, shortstop is where they have some depth in the minor leagues. They have some guys that are candidates to be major league players that are shortstops. So it'll be interesting to see how they attack that position in the offseason. And Sid, it's all about pitching. It looks like right now we do have 2 spots in the rotation locked down. Great pickup by Jed, getting Wade Miley from the Reds. $10 million, a guy that's got an 3.3 ERA and pitched 160 plus innings last year. Takes the ball every 5th day. Is
in a hitter's ballpark.
Exactly, in a home run hitter's ballpark, in a hitter's park, period. And then Hendricks is also in the rotation as well. So it depends on, again, where you see Alzolay and Steele,
Thompson.
And Keegan Thompson. Where do you see those guys? How did you evaluate them in their late season starts? Alzolay had a stint on the DL, was effective in the bullpen, so we got to make some decisions there as well. But again, we'll attack it more in detail when we get our experts on. But
one last thought though on the payroll.
Sure.
$66 million, $24 million of that, 1/3 of that is going to Jason Hayward. All right. He comes off the books next year. All right. And then if you compare their payroll, their payroll is less than Tampa Bay and Oakland right now. If you can, whoever thought that the Cubs payroll would be less than Tampa Bay and Oakland, So,
I know.
So, they're this is why I'm excited about the Cubs. If I had to rank the Bulls, I'm the most excited about. The Cubs, Sox are naturally I'm very excited about, but the Cubs, what they can be in maybe 3 years, it could be really special if they do this the right way.
Right. Well, no, I'm with you. It's not going to be an instant process, but remember though, one thing that we haven't touched on, that is a division where you can go pretty quickly to the top. So we'll see how they attack it, and I'll be fascinated to see. So
the Pirates aren't going to get real good real fast, and then you look at the Reds. How do you not re-sign a Miley? That tells me you're not serious about winning. So the Cardinals are always going to be what the Cardinals are, but you're right. They're you can get good in that division really quick.
Right. White Sox had a great year. They really, really did. And they fell a little bit short. And I think some of their weaknesses were exposed late in the year and in the playoffs. But I really think that this team really, and you're in a good position here where you just have to fill a couple of holes, 2-3 holes, and they could be right back in the thick of it for the World Series next year. I thought Tony La Russa did a really good job as a manager, which when he was named last year, remember, I kind of told the White Sox fans, just relax. He's going to be fine. And he did a terrific job. But obviously they have a couple of weaknesses on their team, or holes to fill, let's call it that. Second base is one. Right field is another. But I'll tell you what, between Vaughn and Sheets, those are 2 good young bats from each side of the plate. And I also think maybe they'll be looking for a top of the rotation starter, whether it be through free agency or a trade. But that's a really good baseball team. They had a terrific season. What do you think overview on the White Sox?
Yeah, I mean, the outfield, I think the outfield's set. I wouldn't spend a lot of money on the outfield because I think, to your point, Vaughn and Sheets can rotate out there and do a fine job. And even some of the other guys they brought off the bench played pretty well for them last year. So I'm not concerned about the outfield. Second base, yeah, I'd go out and get a second baseman. Maybe it was Timmy or Anthony wrote us the other day about Almago ending up with the White Sox. Sure, why not? He'd be an upgrade over what they have. I thought Luriel Garcia did a pretty decent job. But I try to get a star second baseman to round out that offense. And then my biggest thing though with the White Sox is I felt it all year long. Like I kept saying to myself, this dream with Lance Lynn is going to end. Mr. French can't keep going the way he's going, and I in my back of my mind I kept saying I didn't think Giolito was going to be the number one guy. I thought it was going to be Rondon, and then when Rondon's arm started to go bad, which Danny Hill predicted, almost like Nostradamus Hill, predicting that Rondon can't pitch this many innings. Sure enough, like the next show we were talking about his arm going. So I thought that if he could have came around, I thought he could be a legitimate one. He was dominant at times last year, unhittable at times.
Right.
And right. I think they got to go out and get a big arm, a big arm, like spend on Scherzer, spend on somebody like that's going to be that guy that can shut things down. It's like when the Cubs were really good, it was either Lester or Arrieta, but they had that guy, and I didn't see that with the White
right.
Sox last year. I saw a lot of guys that were number 2s, number 3s, can Cease or Kopech
right.
be that guy? I wouldn't want to bet on it. I'd rather see them just go out and spend the money. And also at some point you got to start like getting rid of some prospects, right? I mean, you got a lot of prospects, a lot of chips that you can deal. They seem to want to hold on to that with the White Sox, which, as a Cubs fan, I was like, why were you, moving Jimenez and moving, all these other players, Gleyber Torres, and I thought they let some guys go that they shouldn't have. But with the Sox, I think they're at that point now where if they're going to make a run, they got to give up something to get something, and I think they got to part with some of their prospects. But
right,
I need the only thing I think they definitely need is a big arm and the number one guy. Which I mean, do you feel that way? Do you feel like they have a lockdown number one starter?
No, I'm with you 100%. Lance Lynn has never been a one.
Yeah,
he was pitching like a one for a period this year, and so was Rondon. Or Rodon. I'm sorry, Rodon. But again, if anyone was going to emerge from that group to be a number one, it would have been Giolito, who never really found it this year. I don't think consistently. I mean, he's still a really good pitcher. I'd love to have him on my team. But and then Dallas Keuchel, guys who are soft tossers like that, they've got to be really fine and really precise. But he's a guy that I wouldn't count out yet. He'll be in the mix for rotation spot, and they kind of announced already that Kopech is going to be given a shot to be a starter next year. So maybe that's your number one. Who knows? Even though he has a little bit of an injury history, it looks like Scherzer you brought up. Excuse me. Seems pretty content with playing on the West Coast.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised to see him back with the Dodgers. But there's guys available in trade. Justin Verlander's out there if you want to take a shot on a 39-year-old. He had a throwing day for a bunch of scouts the other day. He was throwing 95. Appeared to be in really good health. So they're going to have options. Rick Hahn's an excellent GM. So I'm sure they're going to put another really good team on the field next year.
Yeah, I don't think they have a shot against Scherzer, but I think they need a Scherzer type. And I think that's why I'm saying, if you look at the list of free agents coming out, there isn't that guy other than Scherzer. Probably, Gaussman isn't really a power pitcher. I want a power pitcher. I want a Verlander type. When Verlander was going good, because it's soft toss stuff, it catches up to you, particularly in the playoffs. I just think that's a formula that doesn't really work. It might work during the course of the regular season. When the playoff intensity starts, it just doesn't seem like it works as well. So I just want a power number one pitcher with the White Sox and round out that staff and get it done,
Right.
And I can't, to your point, like Kopech, I love him. I mean, when he's pitching and he's on, he is that kind of guy, but I can't trust it with the injury history and the fact that they've kind of babied him last year. I mean, that he was a middle relief guy, and I would have loved to have seen them try to, and I called for that a few times, like when they had some injuries, put him in there. Let's see what he can do. And then they
stretch him out.
Lopez, or they went with somebody else,
Right.
So it's a big if with him, but
Right.
I wouldn't trade that guy. I would not trade Kopech.
Right. No, he's got to get a legitimate, extended shot to be in the rotation. I think that's what he wants to.
Yeah.
As always, thank you to our audience for viewing the Sit and Pie Show. We look forward to future episodes and providing you with the latest information on Chicago sports. Thank you.